It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
The plague of airborne microplastics is getting worse by the day. The nanoparticle kind, the extremely bioavailable kind, aka the easily absorbed into everything including us kind. Every single drop of rain on planet Earth is now contaminated with a plethora of toxic elements, as peer-reviewed science study has already proven. Is what we see taking place in our skies core to this equation? Let's keep going. You can decide for yourself. New from the UK Guardian. Microplastics are infiltrating brain tissue, studies show. There's nowhere left untouched. End quote from this headline report. Yes, nowhere to hide. Keep that in mind. From NDTV.com, Microplastics Invade Human Brains. Researchers call for global emergency. The report says the global use of plastic has led to severe environmental contamination, with microplastics now found in air, water, soil, food, and human organs. Another question. Are microplastics, aka polymers, an element named in climate engineering patents? The short answer is yes. More details in a moment on that. First, more breaking headlines. From the Sydney Morning Herald, human brain tissue made up of 0.5% microplastics, study reveals. Stop and ponder that headline. 0.5% of human brain tissue is now comprised of microplastics. Here's another question. What other elements, like heavy metals, for example, are now a part of our brain composition, but not being disclosed yet? Also, for the record, aluminum nanoparticles are named as an element called for in climate engineering patents, an element which has showed up in almost every single precipitation test from across the country and across the world. Hundreds of tests. Just a coincidence? You decide. But before you do, take the time to view the groundbreaking Geoengineeringwatch.org documentary on climate engineering titled The Dimming, available to view for free from the homepage of Geoengineeringwatch.org, now with, I believe, closing in on 23 million views, in spite of social media censorship. And for those that couldn't care less about their brains, but are more worried about weight gain, new from Forbes, your plastic water bottle may be making you gain weight. From that report, microplastics are in the products we use daily. Every liter of bottled water contains at least 240,000 microplastic particles, almost 250,000. The Forbes report continues. They're not just in plastic bottles and containers. They're also in plastic cutting boards, Teflon cookware, fabrics, and beauty products. The list goes on. The implications of their presence in our lives are alarming. Emergent research suggests that these microplastics may significantly impact our health, acting as endocrine disruptors, altering hormonal signaling, and potentially leading to weight gain and other serious health issues, like brain dysfunction. Isn't that a little more serious? None of this bodes well for our collective futures, or perhaps the lack of our collective future. So, about what's coming down in our rain. Is this a clue? Patent number US 631521-3B1. United States patent method of modifying weather, abstract, a method for artificially modifying the weather by seeding rain clouds of a storm with suitable cross-linked aqueous polymers. That's a microplastic. The polymer is dispersed into the cloud, and the wind of the storm agitates the mixture, causing the polymer to absorb the rain. This reaction forms a gelatinous substance which precipitates to the surface below, thus diminishing the cloud's ability to rain. Question: are there patents which call for the use of polymers for other types of climate modification objectives and agendas? Short answer, yes. Back to the UK Guardian report titled Microplastics Are Infiltrating Brain Tissue. And though this report, of course, never mentions climate engineering, I'll leave it up to you, the listener, to determine and decide what puzzle pieces fit into this very disturbing equation. From the Guardian report, a growing body of scientific evidence shows that microplastics are accumulating in critical human organs, including the brain, leading researchers to call for a more urgent action to rein in plastic pollution. Studies have detected tiny, shards and specks of plastic in human lungs, placenta, reproductive organs, livers, kidneys, knee and elbow joints, blood vessels, and bone marrow. Question, is any official source even looking for highly toxic heavy metals in all the same places? Short answer, no. I wonder why not. You decide. The Guardian report then states, given the research findings, it is now imperative to declare a global emergency to deal with plastic pollution. There's more. Animal studies have also linked microplastics to fertility issues, various cancers, a disrupted endocrine and immune system, and impaired learning and memory. National Institute of Health researchers found a particularly concerning accumulation of microplastics in brain samples. There are currently no governmental standards for plastic particles in food or water in the United States. Wow, what a surprise. Or not. No standards whatsoever. Nothing to see here. Move along. Let's keep going. There's much more. An examination of the livers, kidneys, and brains of autopsied bodies found that all contained microplastics, no exceptions. Further, the 91 brain samples contained an average of about 10 to 20 times more than the other organs. The results came as a shock, the report states. Conclusion, the human brain seems to be a magnet for these unimaginably tiny nanoparticles that easily cross the blood-brain barrier. Report continues, 12 brain samples from people who had died with dementia, including Alzheimer's disease, contained up to 10 times more plastic by weight than healthy samples. Remember, when you look up, everything that goes up must come down. How much particulate matter does it take to completely blot out the sky day after day? Grid patterns, X's, circles. Think it's just condensation? Think again. The report then states the quantity of microplastics in brain samples from 2024 was about 50% higher than samples taken in 2016. Huge increase in a very short time. They then say when it comes to these insidious particles, the blood-brain barrier is not as protective as we like to think, which for the record, Geoengineeringwatch.org has stated for the last decade and a half. Why has it taken so long for so-called academia to start telling the truth? Because they can no longer hide it as populations get sicker and dumber by the day. Try not to breathe. More excerpts from the Guardian report. Adding to the concern about accumulation in the human body, the Journal of Hazardous Materials published a study recently that found microplastics in all 16 samples of bone marrow examined. Another recent study, which examined 45 patients undergoing hip or knee surgery, found microplastics in the membranous lining of every single hip or knee joint. Every single one they examined. Another study published earlier this year in the Journal of Toxicological Sciences found microplastics in all 23 human and 47 canine testicles studied, finding that samples from humans had nearly threefold greater concentration than those from dogs. A Chinese group published a study also earlier this year showing quantities of microplastics in the semen of all 40 participants. An Italian paper from a few months earlier reported similar results. Studies have also found contamination in human placentas, mentioned earlier. The May issue of Toxicological Sciences reported finding micro and nanoplastics in all 62 placenta samples they tested. Final statement from the Guardian report. There's nowhere left untouched from the deep sea to the atmosphere to the human brain, end quote. And again, what about all the other toxic elements named in climate engineering patents? Elements like aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, graphene, surfactants, all of this showing up in countless precipitation samples from around the world. How much toxic filth does it take to blot out skies everywhere, to completely derail weather everywhere? If you think those at the top of the power pyramid are trying to save us from ourselves, think again. Let's add this from SciTechDaily.com and other sources. Researchers uncover alarming link between plastic exposure and autism in male offspring. Why would it just be males? A common type of plastic has been linked to autism in boys. They simply haven't studied females yet. Researchers have discovered higher levels of plastic chemical BPA in pregnant mothers who gave birth to sons with autism. The study was published in Nature Communications. Question: how much longer can we survive in a toxic fishbowl with already crashing insect populations, wildlife populations, aquatic life, and flora from forests to crops? But wait, we just need to elect the right political puppet circus performer, right? Don't hold your breath. Or wait, on second thought, do. This is Dane Wigington. You're listening to the weekly installment of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Report, The End of the World as We Know It broadcast, brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of global climate engineering operations, a.k.a. weather warfare. As I state so many times, reaching a critical mass of awareness is the only way forward in this fight. Only with an army of the awakened, and that means those that understand they are literally fighting for their lives, can we have any chance of turning this tide, waking up the families of those participating both in military, defense contractors, and all other aspects of this insanity. We can and we absolutely must reach a critical mass of awareness by starting a conversation on climate engineering that leads people to a credible source of data. Geoengineeringwatch.org will continue all of our efforts to be the go-to source on covert climate engineering operations. A productive conversation on climate engineering can easily be kickstarted with Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials available on our homepage. Please help us to sound the alarm. Moving on, what else is connected to what is taking place in our skies but not being admitted to? From MSN, this new headline: global warming is creating potentially deadly fungal pathogens, study finds. Scientists in China uncovered a previously unknown fungal pathogen that had never been seen before in humans. Drug-resistant Rhodosporidiopolys. Probably messed that one up, but you get the idea. Another, for the record, for 15 years, Geoengineeringwatch.org has tried to sound the alarm about the dangers of saturating Earth's atmosphere with massive quantities of nanoparticles, which, in addition to being highly toxic in and of themselves, double as a fungal proliferation platform. Imagine that. And how can we know what else is being dispersed in this mix? What else is being experimented with? We can't know unless we know exactly what we're looking for. We can't even test for it. Next question: can and do climate engineering elements trap more heat than they are claimed to deflect, making an already bad climate scenario even worse? Short answer, yes. On that note, from Salon.com, this new headline report: climate change is making it too hot for bumblebees to adapt, threatening their existence. From the report, a new study reveals that climate change is devastating bumblebee populations that need it to be colder. Bee populations are rapidly collapsing because of human activity, the report says. First, a class of pesticides known as neonicotinoids was definitely linked to this dangerous decline. But what is the Salon.com report leaving out, which is mathematically a far larger core component to the bee colony collapse disorder? Search bees aluminum for peer-reviewed study that confirms bees are dying of extreme aluminum exposure, dying of symptoms that resemble Alzheimer's and dementia in human beings. They can't even find their way back to the hives. Question: how long till we can't find our way home? And again, for the record, aluminum nanoparticles, key element named in climate intervention patents. Why? Because it's reflective. Do they care about the consequences? Obviously not. Next, is that ozone hole existential threat all better now, as we've been told over and over? Not so much. Ignore that burning sensation from the sun on your skin, on surfaces, your car. Ignore it at your own peril. From IFLScience.com, Antarctic's hole in the ozone layer has opened early, sparking worry. The hole in the ozone layer above Antarctica is strangely large for this time of year, prompting fears that it could lead to further warming of the South Pole. Another question: is this dire ozone problem just over Antarctica? No. The ozone layer has been greatly diminished globally, something that official sources are trying desperately to hide from populations until the last possible moment. Search the ozone destruction section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org to learn more. Other random headlines, this one about the giant hail that now seems to be the new normal in almost every significant storm. Here's the title of a newly published science study from nature.com: Hail Storm Size Dichotomy in a Warming World. So does that make sense? A much warmer world makes much bigger hail. No, this is a lie. Yes, the climate engineering cover-up agencies like the Weather Channel will try to convince you that the off-the-charts hail, both extent and size, is due to more convection in the atmosphere. And if this is so, then why does the hail have patented chemical ice nucleating elements in it, as lab tests have proven? The same is true with the chemically nucleated so-called snow, which tends to sublimate, meaning that much of the moisture converts directly to a gas, water vapor, bypassing the liquid stage. Thus, there's much less runoff. More shortly on that subject. If you want to see extreme chemical ice nucleation consequences, search Lake Michigan ice balls. Take a look at those images. Here's an update on the planetary incinerations that also force populations to inhale increasingly toxic smoke particulates. Again, Geoengineering captured blanket grid pattern aerosol spraying directly above the smoke canopy for the Paradise Fire, and that is certainly not a unique situation. Here's the headline: Brazilians struggle to breathe as Amazon burns. That's from channelnewsasia.com. From the report, Brazil, residents of Porto Velho in the Brazilian Amazon have barely seen sunlight in days as thick clouds of smoke from the forest fires envelop their city. Quote, "We are struggling to breathe," said 30-year-old teacher Tayane Moraes, one of the 460,000 people who live in the city near the border with Bolivia. The Amazon as a whole has recorded more than 42,000 forest fires this year from January 1st to August 19th, 2024. That number was 87% higher than in the same period of 2023. Consider that the primary foundational pillars of Earth's life support systems, like the Amazon, are collapsing now, not somewhere in the future. If that doesn't alarm you to the core, it should. And what about back home here in the U.S.? A similar tale continues from the New York Times. Half their land burned in a decade. The California counties that are constantly on fire into the headline. I live in one of those counties where firestorm roulette has become the new normal, always watching the horizon along with the skies and what's taking place there above our heads. That is core to this whole equation, a core factor to it. The conditions that create the constant incinerations. If you're willing to face what most are trying to pretend isn't so, check the Engineering Wildfires section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org about the source of ignition for the burn downs. That's another subject. Again, what is establishing the conditions for the ever-worsening firestorms? That's what needs to be addressed and exposed. Please search wildfires serve geoengineering agenda on some search engine other than Google that does their very best to hide anything and everything from geoengineeringwatch.org. On the other side of the world, from earth.com, dozens of fires are raging in Siberia. From that report, the Arctic lowlands of the Russian Far East are typically a frigid landscape of permafrost and peat. But it's also increasingly becoming a region that is prone to wildfires. Yes, like so much of the rest of the world, the new normal. Look up, connect the puzzle pieces. And all the while, the scripted circus of total, meaningless election idiocy and mass distraction continues. Endless bread and circus till the moment of impact. Speaking of which, from Newsbreak.com, this not so good news. Climate scientist says 2/3 of the world is under an effective death sentence because of global warming. A climate scientist said about 2/3 of Earth's population is under an effective death sentence as global warming continues to worsen, bringing brutal heat waves, disastrous hurricanes, and terrifying tornadoes that will eventually be too much for humans to handle. We're about there now. Every corner of the planet is poised to endure dangerous weather. Earth will survive, the report says, but it'll be different. Humans are the ones at risk. And of course, no mention in this report of any climate engineering, anything, no surprise. And as dire as that breaking headline sounds, it's not the truth. Here's the truth. It's far worse than this report states. It's not 2/3 of the population at risk. That's like saying 2/3 of the boat sank. No, wrong. When the boat goes down, a.k.a. Earth's life support systems, all the passengers go with it, including the remaining web of life. New from popularmechanics.com, there are 4 pillars of stability for life on Earth. Scientists say they're close to collapse. From that report, scientists have discerned certain systems that, if they collapse, would spell doom for humanity's future on Earth. A new study analyzes the possibility of such collapse by creating models surrounding 4 of these pillars: the West Antarctic ice sheet, the Greenland ice sheet, the Amazon rainforest, and the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. That's the AMOC I've talked about so many times on this broadcast. The Popular Mechanics report continues with this. The study finds that such a collapse is concerningly likely under current climate policies, and that probability reportedly increases dramatically for every 1/10 of a degree Celsius we blow past our 1.5 degree goal. That does not bode well when unfiltered frontline data and correct graphs showing the true degree of warming since the pre-industrial baseline. We are likely past 3.5 degrees C now. Think about that. Climate engineering further fueling all of it. Next, a new headline from Yahoo News. Experts warn 2024 could be the hottest year on record. Again, any mainstream media coverage of the unfolding and accelerating at blinding speed planetary meltdown, which is being further accelerated by the still officially denied climate engineering weather warfare operations? No. Not a single mention of either extremely near-term existential threat on televised matrix media mass distraction stations. No surprise. From foreignpolicy.com, climate change is making the Middle East uninhabitable. The report says it's been a brutal summer for the region, and the effects are spreading to the rest of the world. Dubai is a stunning example of this, building McMansions on sandbars and massive skyscrapers in the middle of the desert, using unimaginable amounts of energy to try to desalinate the already Dead Sea around this region. Can't and won't continue. You can quote me on that. From Yale Climate Connections, when will climate change turn life in the U.S. upside down? Question mark. Intensifying extreme weather events and an insurance crisis are likely to cause significant economic and political disruption in the U.S. sometime in the next 15 years. They say by late this century, they're optimistic that we'll have successfully ridden the rapids of the climate crisis, emerging into a new era of non-polluting energy with a stabilizing climate. The Yale report then states, quote, there are too many talented and dedicated people who understand the problem and are working hard on solutions. We can't fail, they say. Solutions? Like what? Climate engineering? How's that working out so far? What an absolute pile of delusional Pollyanna total fantasy. The Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, and the Tooth Fairy will save us from ourselves. That's why we're in this dark corner, because there are so few willing to face the truth, and all the power structure-owned institutions are simply spreading and propagating total delusion while we're already spiraling into impact. Next, from the University of Exeter in the UK, overshoot myth risks catastrophic global warming. The report says the idea that we can, quote, overshoot global warming targets, then fix the problem with technology is a dangerous myth. I just covered that, didn't I? Scientists have warned. Dangerous climate change is already here, and net zero plans to get humanity back to safety increasingly rely on science fiction solutions. Yes, they do. And net zero won't stop what's coming, even if it could magically happen. We're through the guardrail. You can't replace the brakes as you're flying through the air toward the bottom of the canyon. You are going to go to the bottom, and that's the position that we are in now. The question is, can we save enough of the planet's life support systems for anybody to survive what's coming? But that's worth fighting for. The situation is worsening, with increasing reliance on future machines, the report says, to remove carbon dioxide from the air or geoengineer the climate. That's directly from the Exeter report. So here's my question. How's playing God with the weather going so far as life on Earth circles the drain? And the clinically insane controllers prepare to play even more dire and destructive cards. On the subject of our dying seas, from PBS, our oceans appear to have a fever. From that report, if ocean temperatures continue to break records, it could bleach corals, generate more intense and fast-developing hurricanes, drive coastal temperatures up, disrupt fisheries, and make extreme rain events more likely. Stop. Could bleach corals, as coral is completely cooking and collapsing around the world, and could disrupt fisheries as the entire fishing industry, everything is hitting the wall. Could make the weather worse? Of course, no mention of climate engineering operations. No, not could, may, might. is. That's the correct term, is. It's happening now. And never mind that any kind of fish, crab, or whatever from our seas or freshwater is now very toxic. Not opinion. Repeatedly confirmed science, study, and testing fact. Last statement from the PBS report, it's likely the warmer earth and air temperatures are contributing to the warmer ocean temperatures. Does it take a team of scientists to figure that out? But they say scientists don't know precisely why sea surface temperatures have climbed so high so fast. Yes, there it is again. The so-called scientists just don't have a clue why Earth's seas are superheating. Just like the same so-called experts don't have any idea why our formerly blue skies are now so often filthy white or silvery at best from the suspended particles in the atmosphere. Try looking straight up through the beam of a very bright light at night in a very dark place. It will reveal the snowstorm of these particles raining down that we're all inhaling with every single breath we take. Particles that trap additional heat in the atmosphere and in our seas. Moving on, there's more. The ocean heat content of the Gulf of Mexico topped the highest on record. So few are so far willing to face the severity of the threat posed by Earth's superheating seas. But very soon, denial won't be an option. But wait, what about this new headline from New Scientist and several other power structure sources? The Atlantic is cooling at record speed and nobody knows why. Is this a joke? No, it's intentional deception. Hurricane Ernesto churned up a part of the Atlantic, a very small part, a tiny blot of blue in an otherwise red above normal temperature ocean, and they're touting this like there's some strange new cooling effect. One tiny spot churned up by a recent hurricane because it brought colder water up from the depths temporarily, and they use this to confuse and divide populations, to cast a seed of doubt. No matter how clear and rationally inarguable the overall trajectory is, this is the tactics they use. And what are the downstream consequences of unnaturally churning up already unnaturally superheating seas? This from the UK Guardian. Study warns deadly ocean upswells increasing due to climate crisis. The report says a new study highlights how the climate-disrupted ocean has pushed a number of aquatic species to flee increasingly high temperatures in the tropics. The forced migration has increasingly resulted in sharks, rays, and other species dying amid intense upswells of cold water from the depths of the ocean. So you have some of these migrating species trying to get out of the water that in Florida last year was 102 degrees. They're moving north, and a hurricane pulls up some cold water from the depths and kills them. That's what's happening. And is Hurricane Ernesto done yet? Not so much. From the UK Daily Express. Hurricane Ernesto, weather warnings as UK set for dangerous conditions. They're going to pump that clear across the Atlantic and do yet more damage while using it as a moisture pump to cool off portions of the planet. Changing gears to the never-ending ionosphere heater-induced high-pressure heat domes. And if you don't know what an ionosphere heater is, please investigate that term. HAARP in Alaska is one example. This week from USA Today, millions of Americans face blistering temperatures as heat dome blankets Gulf Coast states. From Axios.com, extreme heat roasts Texas and Gulf Coast states. From Bloomberg, Texans bid to stay cool in heat lifts power use to new high. From that report, Texans set an unofficial record in electricity use this week as soaring temperatures spurred homeowners, schools, and businesses to crank up air conditioners. Northern and central sections of the Lone Star State contended with hazardous conditions as the heat index, a metric that takes into account the impact of humidity on the human body, surged, according to the National Weather Service. For the record, no amount of air conditioning will save us from the heat index temperatures that are soon enough coming. The feels-like temperatures that have already reached nearly 160 degrees in parts of the world because of rapidly rising humidity levels. Again, no amount of AC will save us from what's unfolding. And when the grids go down for good, what then? And there's this footnote. When the final grid shutdown happens, 442 nuclear power plants will melt down eventually. It takes about 2 to 3 decades to cold shut down these plants. Won't be anybody there to do that. From AccuWeather, northeast to ride temperature roller coaster into next week. The report says while many may be reaching for the long sleeves and jackets into Thursday in the northeast, with temperatures up to 20 degrees below normal, don't pack away the bathing suits and shorts just yet. After the temperatures bottom out at levels more typical of early October, the report says, in the northeast, a warming trend will begin and may end with a summer heat surge in some areas. That's according to AccuWeather meteorologists, the script readers. A large storm is responsible, they say, for the refreshing but unseasonably cool conditions with low humidity from the Great Lakes to the coastal areas of the Northeast and even into much of the interior southeastern United States. That's all it takes. No matter how hot it's been or how radically the whiplash gets, cool it down for a while and everybody forgets all about it. And they think that whatever it's like out there outside their front door, that's indicative of the whole world. Not true. From sfgate.com, here's another example. Anomalously deep low-pressure system to impact California. Same theme. Patented processes of chemical ice nucleation cloud seeding will consume much or most of the available moisture in the west due to endothermic reactions in the atmosphere, but a cold dense layer of air will be produced, will settle to the surface, and will convince many that the record heat summer from hell in Northern California is all better now because of a chemical flash cool down, days after which Northern California is already scheduled to rebound back to 100 degrees or more. And about the skies, when weather is allowed to migrate in, totally unnatural canopies of so-called clouds, no blue skies above, even between the breaks in the unnatural-looking, heavily aerosolized clouds. Now commonly there's no rain in the initial stages of incoming atmospheric moisture due to the climate engineers scattering that moisture over the widest possible region. That's done with frequency transmissions and aerosol dispersions. Too many condensation nuclei, droplets don't fall. You get these opaque, featureless looking skies or strange looking clouds, no moisture. Welcome to solar radiation management. Welcome to script reading so-called weather experts that spout out terms like mostly sunny or filtered sunlight. Yes, there is an epidemic of moral bankruptcy, those that will say or do anything so long as it provides a paycheck and a pension. And any that still believe that either will save them for much longer, time to wake up. The most important commodities will soon be food, water, and shelter. First two items mentioned already contaminated. And no, shiny metals won't matter in the future that we're all about to face. You're listening to the weekly installment of Global Alert News, the Bad News broadcast, installment number 472, August 24th, 2024. This is Dane Wigington, your host. Global Alert News is brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of climate intervention operations, known as geoengineering, a.k.a. again, weather warfare. Recordings of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Hour broadcast can be found on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the recent column and on the Dane Wigington YouTube channel. Geoengineering Watch wishes to express our deepest gratitude, as always, to those that have helped us to expand our reach and thus our voice in this desperate last-hour effort to sound the alarm. If you're on our email list, please put us on your email contact book so that our mailouts don't go to the spam files. Please help us to share the groundbreaking documentary The Dimming, which fully exposes the climate engineering atrocities, now with, I believe, closing in on 23 million views. Thanks to you. The best way to share is by circulating the direct link to The Dimming by email directly from the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Sharing directly helps us to overcome social media censorship. When viewing our YouTube of The Dimming or Global Alert News or any other Geoengineering Watch video on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and comment, all of which helps us to circulate critically important data to a much wider audience. About reaching those that still aren't looking up, here's one way. Start the conversation with Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials. They can be found on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Our only goal to provide activists what they need to move this fight forward are extremely high-quality printed materials with shocking images we distribute for less than our total cost of producing and shipping. Our only goal to expose this insanity once and for all. We have Geoengineering Watch hoodies, Geoengineering Watch shirts. Photos of both are on our homepage. We have scannable business cards and bumper stickers, all effective tools to help strike up a conversation on the climate engineering issue. This battle will take all of us. If we have any chance of turning this tide, it will take all of us. Reaching a critical mass, again, the only way forward in this fight. If we can expose it, we can stop it from the inside out. Awakening those who are participating and their families to what they're participating in, their own demise. If you're willing to share a picture of yourself with a Geoengineering Watch shirt or hoodie, ideally in some crowded location, please send your photo to us so that we can post it as part of our activist compilation, which is part of our materials page. The images, again, encourage others to make their voices heard in this all-important battle to sound the alarm. And to all those that are steadfastly committed to exposing and halting the climate engineering insanity, you have my deepest gratitude now and forever. Moving on, remember I mentioned the sublimation of chemically nucleated snow or frozen material from phys.org. Why isn't Colorado snowpack ending up in the Colorado River? Question mark. Research suggests it might be the lack of spring rainfall. What else are they not telling us? Every year in early April, water managers use the snowpack to predict how much water will be available for the upcoming year. But since the year 2000, these predictions have been incorrect, with the actual stream flow being consistently lower than the predicted stream flow. That left water managers and researchers flummoxed. Where's the water going? Question mark. Researchers found that recent warmer, drier springs account for, they say, 70% of the discrepancy. But is that the truth? The researchers wondered if the snowpack was decreasing because the snow was simply turning into water vapor, a process called sublimation. But the team recently discovered that only 10% of the missing water was lost due to sublimation. Can they say anything otherwise? Because if it was a staggeringly high figure, how would they explain that other than chemical ice nucleation for weather modification, creating an artificially nucleated material that sublimates? Dry ice is the extreme example of this. No runoff from dry ice converts from a solid to a gas. And we have seen absolutely where there's no trees to suck up the water and where lack of spring rains doesn't matter, a pile of snow sitting somewhere and there's very little to no water running off of it. Why would that be? Sublimation. From the nation, Thailand.com. Thai military police respond to sudden heavy flooding in North Thailand. Again, the hallmark of climate intervention operations are drought deluge scenarios, drying it up in one place and it comes down in a deluge somewhere else, all of which serves those in power because it's miring populations in ever more difficulty. They can't focus on anything but day-to-day survival, while their health and their mental capacity continues to decline, as we know. From thewatchers.org, severe flash floods hit Medina in Saudi Arabia. Blame it on nature. How convenient for those in control. From sciencealert.com, one of Earth's continents is rising up. And over that, in previous broadcasts, this is an ongoing situation. They say the effects could be huge. Antarctica is shedding weight, allowing the continent to rise up from the ocean. I've been covering this for a decade and a half. Glacial rebound. Yes, the ice is absolutely melting. Yes, the seas are absolutely rising. Yes, climate engineering is absolutely making it far worse, not better, but it is not the only factor. And when people take that position, they immediately discredit this cause. Immediately. The planet doesn't know the difference from a particle from a smokestack or exhaust pipe or a climate engineering jet. It's all a part of the equation. It's not a this or that equation. It's a this and that equation, and that must be acknowledged if we're to retain credibility. The best way to address this issue is to take this position, as I've repeated so many times, that there is no legitimate discussion about climate, anything from any perspective, without first and foremost addressing climate engineering, which means that all the so-called experts, the so-called climate experts, are one, either criminally ignorant of the field of study in which we're told they're experts, or two, they're lying. Take your pick. But in either case, are they not responsible? Should the public not hold them responsible legally and morally for this mass deception in which they are participants? Please, any climate article author or source, send them a link to the dimming and ask them to explain that one. See if you even get a response. Paychecks and pensions is all that seems to matter to so many that are so morally bankrupt, they refuse to tell the truth. No regard for their honor, which is the only thing that any of us own, it's the only thing that can't be taken. No regard for that. That is our only true possession given by our Creator, ours to protect until the bitter end. How many are conscious of that? This article states the domino effect in Antarctica is crucial. Earth's mantle beneath Antarctica is particularly fluid in some areas. The seismic data has revealed that this high level of viscosity is creating unexpectedly fast rising of the land. The land uplift from reduced ice on the surface is happening in decades rather than over thousands of years. But wait, the politicians will fix it, right? From the New York Times, can Democrats make the case to climate voters? From that report. In another year of record-breaking temperatures, Democrats are faced with the challenge of making climate change resonate with the voters. Global warming, they say, is just the 19th most important issue with voters, behind issues like improving roads, budget deficit. That's according to the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication. 19th most important. How much will any of the other factors matter on a dead planet? How clear can it be that we are hurtling toward exactly that? Human race, again, like the occupants of a car, parked on the train tracks, train bearing down on them with the horn blaring, lights flashing, and nobody has or wants a clue. Just trying to find what station to put the radio on. That's the human race right now. 19th on the list. And where on the list is exposing and stopping climate engineering and weather warfare operations? It isn't on the list, of course, but if we put both subjects in the category of extremely near-term planetary omnicide, stop and consider 19th on the list of public priorities. Sure, the planet's life support systems, the primary ones, are collapsing on every front, but who needs a functional living planet when we have Walmart, McDonald's, 24/7 sports live feeds, ridiculously cheap GMO pizza deliveries just in time for the game, and non-stop scripted political theater if the rest of the other gets boring? The entire web of life, terrestrial and aquatic, is declining and dying at blinding speed. If we remain on the current trajectory, we, all of us, each of us, will die with the former. There's no other possible outcome. If we don't have functional habitat and functional life support systems, we're done. How simple can that be? On the subject of remaining on the current trajectory, from the New York Times, Biden said he would stop drilling. Then reality hit. That's all part of the headline. Let's add this. From citizen.org, Biden's oil letdown. Despite pledge to stop public lands drilling, Trump-era drilling boom continues. Exactly. Meet the new boss. Same as the old boss. And the new boss is perhaps about to be replaced by the old boss, but none of it makes any difference. All power structure political theater, carefully designed and scripted to cause maximum public division and polarization, thus blinding the vast majority to the oncoming train of extremely near-term planetary omnicide, with climate engineering operations raging over it all, till the brutal bitter end. New from Reuters.com, new drilling technology to put billions of barrels of oil in reach, analysts say. Houston, Texas. An oil production breakthrough that producers say can safely tap ultra-high pressure fields could put up to 5 billion barrels of previously inaccessible crude into production, and then we'll put it in the atmosphere. What a great idea, on top of climate engineering and a dying planet. Chevron this week disclosed it had pumped the first oil from a field at 20,000 pounds per square inch of pressure. Think about that. The $5.7 billion Anchor project employs a specially designed equipment and hardware from drill ships from the Transocean Company. Yes, the Transocean Company, the one that brought us all the Deepwater Horizon oil disaster, the Macondo well failure. Anybody remember that? But don't worry. Everything will magically work out fine with punching holes into the 20,000 pounds of pressure per square inch deep oil fields, because the oil industry says it will work out fine. The Reuters report then states the industry is employing new drill ships and equipment that has been created to cope with the extreme pressure that are a third greater than encountered in the Macondo failure. And how many, even now, will wave their flags in full support of permanently trashing what little is left of the planet in order to keep the industrialized, militarized, so-called society, party, going, in order to keep the geoengineering jets flying? And it seems the crosshairs are also focused on other already trashed oil pumping regions of the globe. From the report, quote, similar high-pressure, high-temperature oil fields that would benefit, they say, from the 20K technology that's pumping oil from 20,000 pounds per square inch of pressure are found off the coast of Brazil, Angola, and Nigeria. Yes, what a great benefit for those countries which the carbon fuel industry has already decimated. And no, so-called green energy won't save us. Please view the documentary Planet of the Humans to find out how non-renewable renewable energy is. Again, it is better. It is certainly better than outright incineration of carbon fuels, but it won't save us. It is not, quote, renewable in any true sense. About trashing the planet, which includes drilling and fracking, which is poisoning the last remaining aquifers on the planet, from nature.com. A staggering 4.4 billion people lack safe drinking water, study finds. It's higher than that. It's far higher than that. They're ignoring tap water that has PFAS, forever chemicals in it. There are very few people that have truly clean water from deep water wells. Very few. From the UK Guardian, nobody ever saw anything like this before. How methane emissions are pushing the Amazon towards environmental catastrophe. What happens in one part of the world affects the other part, the butterfly scenario. And people are not taking that into account. They think, oh, it's just the other half of the boat sinking. No, it's not. The whole boat is sinking, and we're all passengers on it. This report says as the world heats up, methane released from thawing permafrost and warming tropical wetlands is intensifying climate breakdown. But they say curbing it is achievable. Yeah, if we have three wishes from, again, the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, and the Tooth Fairy. You can't stop what's coming. We can try to salvage some part of the planet's life support systems, but you can't just turn it off. It's all these so-called academicians want us to think at the end of every environmental documentary, what do we see? Don't worry, go back to sleep, buy a Prius and some solar panels, and everything will be fine. How is that going? As I ask so often, how's that going so far? While everybody's going about their lives and the planet imploding around them, pretending that some elected puppet is going to make a difference. The last person to draw a line in the sand with the power structure was John F. Kennedy. How long did he live after? The rest is theater. Moving on, more on planetary meltdown, this time from the Mediterranean, from France24.com. Mediterranean Sea reaches highest surface temperature ever recorded. From InsideRelease.com, Mediterranean meltdown, the devastating effects of Mediterranean warming. From that report, a crisis unfolds in the heart of the Mediterranean. As summer 2024 draws to a close, Italy's coastal waters are experiencing an unprecedented and alarming phenomenon. Sea temperatures have reached record highs, marking a significant and terrifying milestone. More on unfolding and accelerating global meltdown, further fueled overall by climate engineering operations. From the UK Guardian, last month marked the world's hottest July on record, US scientists say. The report then states, this year could beat 2023 for the hottest year on record. As 15-month heat streak extends, the world just had its hottest July ever recorded, elongating a string of monthly temperature highs that now stretches back 15 consecutive months. What is truly staggering, the report says, is how large the difference is between the temperature of the last 13 months and the previous temperature records. And there's this from the World Meteorological Organization. According to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, July 2024 was the warmest July on record for the globe in NOAA's 175-year record-keeping history. Actually, what the data truly states, using paleo data, it would have been the warmest period in perhaps 100,000 plus years. Think about that. Don't believe me. Don't believe anything I report on this broadcast. Please actually investigate. And aside from what anybody says, me or anybody else, look around. Does it seem like it's getting colder? Does it seem like we're entering an ice age, as some people still mind-bogglingly try to claim? Global cooling? What planet are they actually on? Because it's not this one. And climate engineering making all of it worse, not better. And some of the same sources claim just jet exhaust, making X's and O's and flying where there's no commercial flights, and planes turning off their transponders with nozzles visible, turning on and off. Please, please, use your sense of reason. Think for yourself. Believe yourself. From ABC Australia, summer heat arrives in August, threatening to break all-time Australian winter temperature records. No surprise. From MSN.com, scientists issue warning as temperatures in Antarctica soar above normal. This heat wave is near record or record event. Another from SciTech Daily. Svalbard crisis, that's in the Arctic. Glaciers melt at unprecedented rates as temperatures soar. Reports that summer 2024 saw Svalbard's Ice caps melt at record levels, driven by higher temperatures and further exacerbating a persistent heat dome, high-pressure heat dome over Scandinavia. The exceptional melting continued into August, corresponding with a persistent heat dome again that baked parts of Scandinavia's Arctic in record high temperatures. That's where the doomsday seed vault is. That's interesting, isn't it? For those that are preparing for the end of the world and have been for a very long time, the ice around their seed vault is melting. In fact, it's leaking inside the vault, causing a great deal of problems. So much for the plans of the all-knowing global so-called elite. From European Geosciences Union, surface networks in the Arctic may miss a future methane bomb. What are they talking about? That the modeling doesn't allow for or include any calculation for the now thawing and exploding methane. Search Siberian methane craters. You will be shocked at what you see. The craters on the seafloor are 10 times bigger. Methane is thawing, releasing, exploding from the tundra and the seafloors, and migrating into the atmosphere, covering the planet like a layer of glass. Climate engineering in the attempt to mask what's happening, making it worse, not better. Yes, near-term existential threats closing in from every imaginable direction. Why aren't human beings responding? Let's get back to the human brain. Plastic nanoparticles aren't the only problem. From medicaldaily.com, inside the human brain, how watching TV changes neural pathways versus reading a book. How many read a book now? So few got their little devices in their hands. That's as far as they get. From Johns Hopkins magazine, new study suggests that too much TV can actually rot your brain. That report states that too much viewing can lead to reduced amounts of cranial gray matter, home to the neurons that perform the bulk of our mental processing. That doesn't sound good, does it? From psychmechanics.com, how TV influences your mind through hypnosis. From mentalfloss.com, new research suggests watching TV is linked to memory problems in older adults. What a surprise. And now add years of exposure to countless chemicals, nanoparticles of heavy metals and polymers, constant frequency transmissions coming from every direction, the most powerful of which by far are core components of climate engineering operations. Where do we go from here? What can we do? Are we helpless? Absolutely not. First, those that have demonstrated the courage to disseminate unwanted and unwelcome truths to family, friends, and others know all too well how quickly those same family members, friends, and others are to disown and demonize them for refusing to go along with the denial and delusion of everything being okay when it's anything but. Here's a question. What's most alarming? Being a passenger on a dying planet with a clinically insane power structure in control, or being a passenger on a dying planet when the vast majority of your fellow passengers not only don't care about or even want to know about their coming fate if we remain on the current course, but most are waving their banners in full support of business as usual till the brutal, bitter end. Which is scarier? Psychotic controllers or hopelessly asleep at the wheel populations? You decide. A Native American elder stated this: if the white man wants to live in peace with the Indian, he can live in peace. Treat all men alike. Give them all the same law. Give them all an equal chance to live and grow. All men were made by the same great spirit chief. They are all brothers. The earth is the mother of all people, and all people should have equal rights upon it. For those that have the courage and fortitude to fully face the untold story of this America and of its original inhabitants, some of which were my ancestors, the Choctaw, search and view the following documentary film, which, for the record, quite literally altered the course of my life almost 3 decades ago. Earth and the American Dream. It can be found online. This documentary film moved me to the marrow. I have never looked back. My life was and is forever changed. Again, I ask, why are we here? Philosopher Eckhart Tolle stated the following: as far as the still unconscious majority of the population is concerned, only a critical limit situation has the potential to crack the hard shell of the ego and force them into surrender of what is, of the now, so to speak, and so into an awakened state. A limit situation arises when, through some form of disaster, drastic upheaval, deep loss, or suffering, one's entire world is shattered and no longer makes sense. It is an encounter with death, be it physical or psychological. The egoic mind, the creator of this world, then collapses. And out of the ashes of the old world, a new world becomes possible. The current paradigm, the industrialized, militarized, so-called society paradigm, has been built on the back of countless social and ecological injustices. Loot, plunder, pillage, and pollute until nothing is left. This is our collective, extremely near-term horizon. Short of a complete course correction by our species, planetary omnicide will be our collective, extremely near-term destination. But the future is not yet written. A life of unshakable meaning can exist in knowing at your core that you tried, that no matter what your personal circumstances were or are, that no matter how much resistance you had to stand against from family, friends, and others, you stood your ground, that you didn't yield to the insanity. That's a life worth living. That's a life well lived. That's a happy ending, whatever the final outcome may be. To thine own self be true, as the proverb goes. And if enough summon the courage to live their lives in this way, to stand unwavering against the rapidly rising sea of insanity, who can say what good we may yet accomplish even at this late hour? Who can say what allies we may yet have that may also rise to the occasion, to our aid, if only enough of us do our individual part? If by our collective courage and effort we can create a large enough break in the proverbial dam of insanity and tyranny that has taken over, a breach that is too large for the tentacles of the power structure to plug, we could trigger a shockwave around the world. We could alter the current trajectory in the right direction. We could, at minimum, buy time. Fully exposing and halting the global climate disruption operations and the long and growing list of toxic elements they include is the great imperative of our time. Every single day counts in this all-important effort. Check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for specific instructions on how you can help to move this fight forward. Please, please, make your voice heard while it can still make a difference. This is the path that leads to truly unshakable solace. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org.